and it's Michigan versus Iowa. Why am I so excited for this game, Steve? Well, let me give you a few reasons why. First and foremost, Iowa is the top 5 killer, Steve. The top 5 killer when it comes to these games. Let's put this into perspective here. Since 2008, a top 5 team that has come into Iowa is 1-5. 1-5 top 5 teams. 4 of the 6 of those games, Iowa's been unranked, just like they are right now. That is a crazy stat. As for Michigan, Harbaugh's 0-2 as a player heading into Iowa. Something really interesting there. I mean, but obviously we have to keep in mind that Michigan did beat this team. This is a Big Ten rematch, and Michigan did take care of them very easy last year. I believe that score was 42-3, if I'm not mistaken. But this Michigan squad is completely different. This Iowa defense is still here to stay. We're going to talk a lot about that as well. Let me get our names off here. And really, the first thing comes to mind is the quarterback for Michigan. We're going to dig into that. But let's look at the stats real quick. Let's go to the showdown. Michigan's last game, a win versus Maryland. That was a really good win. I thought Maryland showed up and played some really good football. Maryland is a really good football team, but Michigan got the better end at the end of it. They started off, smacked Michigan right in the mouth with that fumble return that turned into a touchdown the very next play on the first play of the game. Michigan was tested for the first time last week at Maryland, and they showed up. What was your thoughts on that one?
Watching the game, I was convinced really up until the final score that Maryland was going to pull it off. I think when we were talking last week, I had said Maryland. I think Maryland, that's the upset special. Maryland's going to beat Michigan. I thought McCarthy, he didn't get rattled, but I think he looked a little indecisive at times against that Maryland defense. They threw a lot of different schemes at him that he obviously hadn't seen with the rather pathetic schedule that Michigan had put up, prior to the Maryland game. And then when you look at on the other end with Iowa beating Rutgers, I mean, Rutgers has a good defense, and this just pitiful Iowa offense put up 27 points on them. So
I was interested about this Rutgers game. I know you pay attention to it. We thought that game was going to be a lot closer. 17-point lead against Rutgers there. Iowa's offense really didn't show up. It was still defensive scoring for the Hawkeyes.
But it doesn't matter. As long as the points go up on the board, I don't care how they score. Seriously, I don't care if they have 18 safeties. I don't care. I mean, just go ahead and do it. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Just go ahead and do it. Thank God we don't really get into analytics with college football much, not yet at least, but that's what drives me crazy about baseball and sports that go with analytics. Suddenly, the fact that goals are scored don't matter, or touchdowns are scored or not matter, or yards are gained. Now suddenly it's like, well, it's expected because of this and the weather's out of the north. That, it can't be that way. That's why college sports there's a purity to it that has just been sucking me in week by week. I'm just getting deeper and deeper into this. And so it's been awesome for us to be able to talk about it the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree. No, I'm with you. I do think it doesn't matter how the points are scored, but obviously you want the side of the ball that's supposed to score the points to be top notch, or at least not in the certain position that Iowa's in, which we'll get to in just a moment. But let's look at these team stats so far for the year. Michigan's doing fantastic on scoring the football. They really are. They're scoring 50 points per game. Now, obviously, before Maryland, that number was, you could call it skewed if you wanted to, because the competition they had, arguably the 3 teams they faced before Maryland are in the bottom 25 of the FBS, Steve, and probably will remain in the bottom 25 for the entire season. Michigan's season started last week. Let's be honest. They had the opportunity to pick what quarterback they wanted in their first 2 weeks of play, because they knew that they would easily take care of their competition. I hate to say that, but that's just how they felt. Last week was the first week of Michigan season. This is where it really gets going because they're on the road. And they haven't allowed a lot of points either. When you look at both of these teams, between them, they're only averaging 16 points a game apiece. This game should be low scoring if the defenses hold up. If not, there's an opportunity that Michigan could really take off because they know how to score points. In my mind, though, Steve, it all relies around J.J. McCarthy. And it has to rely around him because this is his first true road test as a quarterback for the Wolverines. He looked great last week, thrown over for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. He didn't really have to make a lot of plays because he was helped by his run game. His run game was outstanding. He hasn't thrown a pick yet, but just like you said in that Maryland game, there were some times where he showed some signs of weakness. If he shows any of those signs of weakness, underthrows a ball, overthrows a ball, Iowa's defense is so mechanically just perfect. I mean, honestly, that's like there's no better way. They understand their mechanics, and they might understand Michigan's offense better than Michigan itself because they have so much time to prep for the other team because they know their fundamentals so well. If McCarthy has a problem just once, he's in for it, and then it might just be the end.
It could very well be, and Iowa's defense is relentless. It is attack, attack, attack. They want to try to force you into mistakes. Conversely, Michigan has not been shooting themselves in the foot like previous Michigan teams have. I think they only have like 9 penalties the whole year. And that's amazing, really, because even against weaker competition, Michigan seems to, or they have in the past, seem to put themselves in bad positions. I think there's only been 1 turnover. So it'll be interesting to see whether Iowa can force the issue. But it's like blood in the water for a shark. If they sense something, I think Iowa's going to a lot more blitz packages. I think they're really going to force McCarthy to beat him. So if they put up a bunch of points and McCarthy's solves the defense, that's fine. Iowa can live with that. They're going to die on that sword. But I don't think Iowa's going to really mess with McCarthy's mind in a lot of ways. I mean, he's just not used to seeing, as good as Maryland played last week, that level of defensive tenaciousness. So I really think that this is going to be, like you said, a low-scoring game. But Iowa has a chance if they can force turnovers early or get them flustered where Michigan starts committing penalties. That's going to play right into Iowa's game plan.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Although Maryland played a fantastic football game, they are not the defense of the Iowa Hawkeyes. I mean, we know that Iowa is one of the best defenses in all the land. McCarthy did look good. I know we're spending a lot of time on McCarthy, but I mean, it makes sense. The Michigan signal caller deserves some looks here. McCarthy did look good when Maryland was up, so he was tested, and that's what I liked. He was tested in that game, and he had to find a way to play down. It was the first time that he was down all season, and he found a way to play well. He didn't have to rely on his arm because the next person we're going to talk about did a fantastic job and took care of it for Michigan to keep them in the game and win the game. And Michigan's defense also did good. It might be a little different this week, though. If Iowa stays down, or if Iowa gets up and Michigan gets down, they might not be able to come back because that Iowa defense is not just a break, don't bend. They are a break, and we're not going to bend. And if we do bend, it's going to be just a little bit. Like we are a very hard middle here. We don't bend very much. But speaking of that other person that was absolutely outstanding in the game last week against Maryland was Blake Quorum. And Quorum's turning into one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. You can even put him in the top of the country. I don't know if he's top notch in the Big Ten. I think Dennis Brown from Illinois might have some words for that. But the biggest thing here is, can Blake get through the Hawkeyes defense? Like, can he get through that? Is that something that we could see from the Michigan offense and from Quorum?
I wonder if they're not going to try to engage him even more in the passing game, in the short passing game, keep Iowa not off balance, because I don't think Iowa's defense ever really gets rattled, but it's like, oh man, right? Maybe we need to, to assign a linebacker and a safety to him if he's coming out of the backfield. I mean, that was one of the best games by a running back I think I've seen in a long time. And again, like you said, the kid at Illinois, he's a good grinded out running back, but Blake Quorum can do it all. I mean, I hate to bring up the Christian McCaffrey, because everybody has to make comparisons. You can't just be Blake Quorum. You have to be somebody else. But watching him play, it was McCaffrey all over again, not only in college but in the pros. So, but it would not surprise me if Michigan tries to get him involved in the short passing game, just to kind of really control the clock. Because if Iowa can shut down the run, they can still, on the short screen passes or the short routes or the out routes, they can still control the ball and march themselves down the field and ideally try to wear them down a little bit.
When you look at Blake Corum, I thought one of the most hilarious sound bites that I've heard all week was Harbaugh's post conference. He was talking about Blake Corum, and he said, usually some running backs that are really good will make cuts a foot, 2 foot before the defender and get out of there. He's like, Blake Corum is able to smell your breath before he makes his cut and get by. And I thought that was hilarious. And it was just showing that he's just a different kind of running back. And you're starting to see that. And obviously you saw that last week with his almost 250 yards in the ground. But if you notice on the screen, he had 30 attempts last week, Steve. If there is this rushing attack does not work against this Iowa defense, they're obviously going to have to make adjustments that put more weight on JJ McCarthy. And that's where those mistakes could happen.
No, absolutely. And again, it's, and maybe I misread watching McCarthy, but it just seemed that he was indecisive at times, and that cost him. He played a good game, and when he was as responsible as anyone for Michigan beating Maryland, but it just seemed that when Maryland had a different scheme out there, you could almost see him when he was dropping back saying, I don't know, what should I force it here? Should I look for an alternate receiver? So it'll be interesting to see if he gets rattled, or maybe rattle's the wrong word, befuddled. Maybe he's puzzled by some of the things Iowa's going to do, and will that affect him perhaps trying to force balls into places which you don't want to do against Iowa.
Absolutely. No, we saw that last week against Rutgers. I mean, their defensive back make receiver-like catches for interceptions. It's absolutely incredible. Speaking of that Iowa team, though, it seems pretty double-sided. If they can't find a way to stop Michigan defensively, I think this game is completely over. I don't think they have any shot at the other side of the ball. The only way is up, though, Steve. If you look at this, they are the number 6 defense in the country. Now, this is on total defense against total offense. They're only allowing 236 yards per game, but on the offensive side, they are the absolute worst team. Not just Power 5, not just Big 10. They are the worst team in FBS in the country in total offense, only getting 232 yards. It's just a flip of a coin of how bad this is. It's great on one end of the ball, atrocious on the other. When you're going against a team as good as Michigan, this is an issue. We talk about how Iowa's a number 5 killer, a top 5 killer. It's never been this big of a split between defense and offense in the past. Now, obviously, defense has led this team. We've seen that for a very long time, almost 25 years now, of how well this defense has been taken on. But this is a big gap. And is this gap big enough or is it too small? Obviously, you can't get any bigger than this, but is this gap going to be what hurts the Iowa Hawkeyes from winning this football game?
I think it has to be, because really, if you watch Iowa play, do you ever expect them to pass? I mean, yeah, okay, 3rd and long, okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to try to make a pass, but I'm drawing a blank on Iowa's quarterback's name, but he just doesn't seem to have the ability to make a throw, not even downfield, but even like, a mid-range, 10 to 20 yard throw. He just doesn't seem to have that touch and that knack. So you can just basically load up, up the middle and just say, okay, try to beat us, try to generate some kind of offense. It's the defense is going to have to force the turnovers to give them good field position so that by accident Iowa can score.
That makes sense. I'm with you on that one. With this game, Michigan versus Iowa, Michigan is an 11-point favorite. Over under is at 42. According to the ESPN matchup predictor, 76.8% predict Michigan to win this football game. I just don't think that the spread is going to happen. And the reason behind that is I do have some faith in Iowa's defense, and I think they're going to keep this game a lot closer. I don't know if they're going to have to rely on their offense as much. I think they're going to find a way to get to JJ McCarthy. Do I think they'll win this game? No. I think Michigan's going to win this game, but I don't think they win by 11. I think it's a touchdown or less. That's where I'm sitting on the spread. So I would take Iowa points if I was betting. And then with the 42 points, again, I'm going to stick with Iowa's defense here, and I think Michigan's defense isn't bad either. And obviously against this offense, shouldn't be a big deal. So I'd take the under as well. But I still got Michigan winning this football game.
Iowa 15, Michigan 13.
Ooh, wow. Look at that. We're starting this off, starting 5 for Friday with 2 different picks and an upset from Steve. That's exactly what I'm talking about, because last week we were on the same page and we didn't do well. So one of us is gonna do right today. So all right, that's what I'm talking about. Look at that, starting right off the bat. So a Michigan upset possible this week. Steve, you called it. If that's the case, all right. Yep. So I see, and it has nothing to do with that Iowa t-shirt you got on, because I know you're not an Iowa fan.
No, I'm not an Iowa fan. I do love the way they play football, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I will say that of that 15 points, they're going to all be field goals, because I don't think they're going to score a touchdown. But I think it's going to come down to Michigan has to go for a 2-point conversion and fails.
All right, so one more bold take. I got one more bold take while we're here then, since you're good at making bold takes. Does JJ McCarthy throw an interception? Does it finally happen this week?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, meaning maybe more than one? Is that what that confidence oh yes sounded like?
Yes. Absolutely. Iowa has to force it.
That's true.
They have to force a turnover. So if I'm going to come out looking like a genius with a score of 15-13 Iowa, they have to get to McCarthy. Now, conversely, what we should look at is that if McCarthy doesn't throw a pick, or that he does stand up to this defense, I think now Michigan, you can put Michigan in the same breath when you're talking about best team in the Big Ten with Ohio State.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. If JJ McCarthy shines in this game and they put a beating on, and they don't make their average of points per game at 50 go down too much, if they can put a decent amount of points up against this defense, we're going to have a different conversation come next week. Maybe it might be one of our overreaction talks we have on Monday morning. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. But it sounds like you got Iowa winning this game in an upset. I love it. But I'm going to sneak with Michigan, but not with the points. So we would both take Iowa here in the betting lines. All right, let's move on here. Excellent. What a way to start off 5 for Friday. That's exactly what we need to do here at SlasherU. I love it. I love it. All right, next one.